So we have a massive problem here in the United States. Some are saying that this is a national emergency, and President Biden is asking for help. That's the good news. The problem is time is running out, and even Democrats don't want to help him. So I'm going to address what's going on here, how this is going to impact you in the near future, and what to expect moving forward. All I ask is one thing, takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates, and now let's begin. So what is it that is turning into a national emergency? Well, again, it has to do with our southern border. This is not the amount of people coming in. Yes, that is the problem, but the solution is not just stopping those people. According to experts, we have to do more, and there is more that we need to do that Democrats and Republicans will never agree on. And right now, the big problem is that Democrats are fighting with President Biden to try to get him to do something. But, like many people are saying, the Biden administration and Democrats have been cornered. Republicans understand that they have won this battle. They have all the power in the world to make a change, and they're going to hold strong. Even President Biden said just the other day, he said that we got to do something, and he reiterated, they ought to give me the money I need to protect the border. Now, that is where things get very interesting, because we are now seeing that the White House and Congress, they're fighting over whether it should be funding or should it be policy changes. Well, according to experts, it has to be both. It cannot just be one. Well, here's where things are at right now. Republicans have already attempted to send President Biden a bill that President Biden wanted to Congress to get this passed. They passed it through the House, went to the Senate, and went nowhere. Now, this is going to happen time and time again. Republicans are going to pass a bill in the House, send it to the Senate, and it won't pass, or it will not even be voted on. And the Senate will pass bills in the Senate, get sent to the House, and it will not be voted on there either, because they have a difference of opinion. Here's what has happened just recently. Republicans, and this is where it comes back to President Biden's ask, saying that they ought to give me the money I need to protect the border. Republicans and Democrats both believe that they have the ideal response to this situation. The problem is the language. For instance, we saw a bill for Israel for $14.3 billion. This is exactly what President Biden wanted. However, Republicans, in exchange for that funding, they pulled the funding from the IRS. That's something that Democrats said, no, we cannot do. Republicans even attempted to give a bill, give a portion of the $60 billion to Ukraine. Well, in exchange, Republicans asked to pair that with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2023, or the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. This was for 2017. Okay, this bill, this expires at the end of 2025. This means that every single American is going to pay more in taxes if this does not get extended. And so that is something that it's more for businesses, but it also is tied to this tax cut where you are paying less in federal taxes because of this. Well, that's on the chopping block as well. But here's where things get interesting. There's actually a group of senators that are working on a bill right now for the border. Well, these senators come back on Monday. Guess what? The problem is that they are trying to compromise with Democrats. And the reason why I say this is a problem is because Republicans in the House have stated that they will turn down any compromise bill because right now Republicans hold all the power. This is why we are seeing at this time, we're seeing Speaker Mike Johnson, he's sparring with the White House over border funding. Because right now, some say that Republicans are desperate, but others say that Democrats are desperate. But here's the thing, the American people need a change. Even cities down on the border say they have to see a change because right now, it is starting to turn into a bigger crisis than we can even understand. Which is why President Biden again faces growing pressures on immigration. And it's not just from Republicans, it's from mayors and governors, Democratic mayors and Democratic governors in Illinois, in New York, in Arizona. We are seeing people are pushing back on the Biden administration. And this is going to be very difficult for President Biden to push forward with anything if he doesn't have the support of his own party. Now, I want to be very clear on one thing, and that is that both sides have agreed that there needs to be changes to both the policy and to the funding. Well, the U.S. needs additional border agents, on the ground. We know that because right now there's not enough. They are pulling agents from certain border crossings, sending them somewhere else so that they can process individuals there. And this is turning into an issue because now we're seeing at that existing border crossing, people are pretty much backlogged, right? We're seeing if the rails close, then shipments aren't going through. The economy is struggling, businesses are struggling, and everybody hates what's happening. Well, that's just one part. We also hear that they're fighting over how many new judges we could potentially get if we pass additional funding, because we need additional judges to process these cases faster as opposed to people waiting 6 months or a year for asylum. Okay, well, that's not policy, that's funding. But where does the funding come from? That is where we are going to have these many discrepancies, many issues, because they're going to fight over pulling funding from this program and that program in order to fund the border. Again, a lot of issues here. So what happens now? Well, according to experts, they say it is going to be very difficult to pass anything at this time, simply because this would constitute a win for Republicans, and Democrats say they cannot give Republicans a win this close to a presidential election. Keep in mind, the election will happen in November. Now, the fastest way to fix this crisis and to fix the problems that we are facing is for President Biden to issue an executive order. Well, experts anticipate this will not happen because, again, this would constitute a win for Republicans, and it would say that President Biden's plan has been a failed plan from the beginning. So we'll see. Now, here's something that could happen. What we could see happen is the Biden administration attempt to send more money to FEMA. Okay? And they could say this money's going to FEMA to provide for wildfires and hurricanes and all this stuff, right? The tsunami over in California, whatever. So all these things could be tacked on to additional funding for FEMA. Well, according to mayors and governors down at the border, they are saying that this should be something that FEMA is taking care of because this is a national emergency. This is an emergency that FEMA should be able to respond to because FEMA feeds and houses people that have been, pretty much pulled from their homes, right? And so, in a sense, this would be where FEMA kicks in. Well, if Republicans, look into this and they're able to read the bills and see where the money's going, then they might have an issue with it. But this could potentially work because this would, in the hopes of Democrats, they could bypass or pretty much get Republicans to agree to this because we're not sending money to the border, we're sending it to FEMA. And then Democrats could spin this in a way that, no, our expectation wasn't that FEMA was going to use it for the border. It was just to provide FEMA with some additional funding. So that's where things get very tricky here. But this is where things get even trickier because right now Republicans and Democrats, some Democrats, not many, are asking for H.R. 2. This is what is known as the Secure the Border Act of 2022. You can see it right, or 2023, excuse me, you can see it right here. So I'll go through just a few of these things really quick. This bill addresses issues regarding immigration and border security, including by imposing limits to asylum eligibility. For example, this bill requires the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, to resume activities to construct a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. It provides statutory authorization for Operation Stone Garden, which provides grants to law enforcement agencies for certain border security operations. It prohibits DHS from processing the entry of non-U.S. nationals, aliens under federal law, arriving between ports of entry. Limits asylum eligibility for non-U.S. nationals who arrive in the United States at a port of entry. Authorize the removal of a non-U.S. national to a country other than the individual's country of nationality or last lawful habitual residence. Whereas currently this type of removal may only be to a country that has an agreement with the United States for such removal. Expands the types of crimes that may make an individual ineligible for asylum. It authorizes DHS to suspend the introduction of certain non-U.S. nationals at an international border. Prohibits states from imposing licensing requirements on immigration detention facilities used to detain minors. Authorizes immigration officers to permit an unaccompanied alien child to withdraw their application for admission into the United States, even if the child is unable to make an independent decision to withdraw the application. Imposes additional penalties for overstaying a visa, and it requires DHS to create an electronic employment eligibility confirmation system modeled after the E-Verify system, and requires all employers to use the system. That is part of what is in Secure the Border Act of 2023. And that is where many Democrats are saying, maybe we need to pass a version of this. Not this exact bill. There's no way we need to pass this exact bill, but pass a version of it, because as of right now, here's where it stands. Right now, it's been introduced, passed the House of Representatives, but it has not gone to the Senate. It didn't go to President Biden for a signature, and which means it has not become law. So that's where we're at this time. But as you may understand, this is turning into a national emergency that some say we cannot address because Republicans can't pass anything without the president's signature and without passing the Senate. The problem is Democrats can't pass anything because if they do, it looks like it's a Republican win, and President Biden's agenda, which he signed into law and he pretty much implemented on day one of him coming into office, well, it's been failed all the way this past few years. So we'll see what happens moving forward. All I can tell you is that as President Biden asks for help, experts worry that he's out of time. So that's what we know at this time. As always, as I know more, I promise, I'll come back on and share all the latest news and updates. That is what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.